I wake up every morning just crying, thinking this is not going to be what's going to happen every single day. It's just so hard to get through it. I just don't know how to get through it.
Tell me about his childhood. Did he play sports? Was he in scouts? What kinds of things did
Yes,
did
he
do?
played sports. He played sports from the time he was 5 years old up until he was 17. And he was in basketball, he was in baseball, he was in football, and loved NASCAR. He and his dad went to the NASCAR races all the time. Loved sports, and he was a good kid. Had two best friends, and that's who he grew up with, and still are friends with them today. And there's nothing that would have predicted any of this could have ever happened.
Yeah.
Nothing in his childhood at all. I would have never in a million years thought something like this could happen to him at all.
You didn't see things like him getting into fights? Or...
No fighting. He was quiet, and he got along with people, and he didn't start anything, and he was a perfect teenager, tell you the truth. He did not even rebel. He wanted to go to NASCAR Tech. We made that possible for him.
What did he do after he finished school?
He worked at the dealership as a service technician and was making good money and loved it. He bought a toolbox, and he started buying his tools, and enjoyed it. He was doing well.
When and where did he meet Shanann?
They met, and he liked her, she liked him, but it didn't, I don't think it was love at first sight or anything. They took a little while and I guess got to know each other and, dated. It was always a little strange that she always said a lot of things about Chris in front of me that I didn't like. Like, this isn't the kind of person I would date. He doesn't know how to do this, or he doesn't know how to do that. He looks like a skater boy. Look at his hair. Look how much stuff he puts on his hair. It was just on and on and on, and I just got a bad feeling.
And they got married in 2012. Did they get married in North Carolina?
They did. Mm-hmm.
How was that?
Oh, we didn't attend.
Really?
Mm-mm. We didn't attend because Shanann and I just couldn't get along, and I didn't like the way she treated him.
What do you know about their marriage and their issues?
Oh, very little, very little. You can only observe. I could only observe what I saw when I was around them. Christopher always seemed anxious, and he when she needed something, I mean, he would run. He wouldn't walk, he would run, he would get it. He just always seemed to be right there at her beck and call.
And did that seem odd to you? Or?
Very odd. It was very odd. He just seemed nervous.
So how much did you see them over these last 6 years?
Probably twice a year. We would go up there.
Did you stay with them, or?
Yeah, we would stay with them, and stay a week, and then come back home.
Tell me about Bella and Celeste.
Oh, Bella was just like Chris, just like him, shy, cautious, conservative. Cece was a ball of fire. I mean, she was fearless, completely fearless. She just loved to run, 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 run. So they were wonderful. It breaks my heart to know that they're not here. They were beautiful children, beautiful children.
What did they call you?
Mimi.
Mimi? And how about Ronnie? What did they call?
Papa.
Do you think Chris loves Shanann?
Oh God, he loved her. Yes, I believe he loved her at first. I believe he did. But I think as the years went on, I think it just being in that kind of a relationship, which the social worker even said that marriage should have ended a long time ago.
Shanann's pregnancy and was what did Chris tell you about that? Was he excited?
No, I don't think he was. I think it was a shock to him. And he said that they have been talking about divorce, that they are not compatible anymore, and he was not happy anymore. And I finally thought he's finally seen the light.
And I take it Chris had never been in trouble with the law?
Never. He's got one speeding ticket and didn't even know about that.
Tell me what happened when they were reported missing. What did you find out? How did you find out? Who told you?
I think Ronnie called me. Ronnie called me and said that they're missing, and I thought, I don't believe it. I didn't believe they were missing. I believed that she was going to punish Chris. She was just going to punish him, take the girls, and just punish him. I had no idea of anything else. Christopher called and said, Mom, they're searching the house. I said, okay, that's fine. I mean, and I still was not worried. I was not worried. I just thought Shanann had run off with girls.
So walk me through the sequence of events over the next few days. Did you and your husband travel to Colorado?
Ronnie did.
Okay.
Ronnie did. And I mean, Christopher let everybody come in. Her phone is there. Her purse is there. Everything is there. But there's no kids and there's no Shanann. And I was not worried. I thought she has just gone off and I'm going to punish you for this and you can worry about me. But when Christopher called us and he said, I said, do you want us to come down now? He said, tell Dad I need him. Tell Dad I need him to come down. I said, what about me? He said, no, Mom, just stay. Just send Dad. And he picked him up at the airport and they drove to the police station. And Chris still didn't say anything to him. Nothing. He had already been interrogated 7 hours prior to that. He had already let the police go into his home, search everything. He was going in for another interrogation. The next thing, after 5 hours, they called Ronnie and said that your son wants to talk to you before he tells us anything. And that's when Christopher broke down and cried and said, I'm sorry, Dad. He said, I went into a rage and I killed her after she killed Cece and Bella. And he found out where he is and then they wouldn't let him see him. He couldn't see him. And so he was going back to the airport when his public defender called him and told him to come back. And that's when Ronnie met his public defender. And so talked to her for a while. And they kept in touch with us and let us know what's going on.
And then what was the next update that you got? Was it?
The next update I got was Ronnie called Jamie and told them they found their bodies. And they rushed over here. Nobody told me anything until they walked through the door. And they told me what happened, and I just fell to the floor. I just fell to the floor. It was unbelievable. it's been unbelievable ever since. And
7 years after the senseless deaths of 4-year-old Celeste and 3-year-old Bella, their grandmother, Cindy Watts, has made some shocking comments about her granddaughters. Comments that have sparked outrage and disbelief. But what do her words really reveal? Does it shed light on the deep pain of a grieving grandmother, or does it expose something far more troubling beneath the surface? In this gripping investigation, we dig into Cindy's controversial statements, examining the truth behind her words and what they truly mean for a family torn apart. Stay with us as we uncover the unsettling layers of a tragedy that continues to haunt us all. Bella Marie Watts was born on December 17, 2013, in Colorado. 2 years later, her sister, Celeste Catherine, arrived on July 17, 2015. To friends and neighbors, these little girls were the picture of joy, growing up in a suburban home with parents who seemed to embody the American dream. Their mother, Shanann, loved to post photos of milestones, birthdays, and dance recitals. She described Bella as her cautious, thoughtful child, while Celeste was her fearless spark, the one who kept everyone on their toes. On the surface, it looked like a thriving family of 4, soon to become 5 with a third baby on the way. But what the public would later learn shattered that picture forever. On August 13, 2018, Shanann returned from a work trip to Arizona. She was 34 years old, 15 weeks pregnant, and already exhausted when a friend dropped her off around 2 a.m. That friend, Nicole Atkinson, was the last person outside the Watts family to see her alive. By later that morning, when Shanann missed a medical appointment and didn't answer calls, Nicole grew concerned. She went to the Frederick, Colorado home, where Shanann's car was still parked in the garage. Her purse, phone, and medication were inside. But Shanann, Bella, and Celeste were gone. Nicole called the police. That call set in motion one of the most widely covered missing persons cases in recent memory. The initial hours were filled with confusion. Chris Watts, Shanann's husband, gave interviews on the porch of their family home. He pleaded for his wife and children to come back, describing the house as empty without them. Those interviews would later become infamous, because investigators and the public noticed how detached he seemed. His words didn't match the gravity of the situation. Meanwhile, the Frederick Police Department, joined by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation and eventually the FBI, searched tirelessly. Within days, inconsistencies in Chris's story began to surface. On August 15, just 2 days after Shanann and the girls were reported missing, Chris was brought in for questioning. Investigators pressed him to take a polygraph test. He failed. Soon after, in an interrogation room, Chris admitted to his father Ronnie that he had killed Shanann. But he told a different story about the girls. In that version, Shanann had smothered Bella and Celeste, and he claimed he reacted in rage. It was a story investigators knew didn't add up, but it gave Cindy Watts, Chris's mother, something to hold on to. From that moment on, Cindy began to cling to the possibility that her son was not the monster the headlines made him out to be. What happened next was swift. On August 16, 2018, authorities discovered the bodies. Shanann had been buried in a shallow grave on property owned by Chris's employer, Anadarko Petroleum. Bella and Celeste were found in oil tanks nearby. The reality of what had occurred was now undeniable. Chris was arrested that same day, charged with multiple counts of first-degree murder, unlawful termination of a pregnancy, and tampering with a deceased human body. By November 6, 2018, Chris Watts appeared in court and entered a guilty plea to 9 separate counts. The plea was part of an agreement to spare him the death penalty. Weld County District Attorney Michael Rourke made it clear, this decision was not made for Chris's sake, but to honor the wishes of Shanann's family, the Rizoseks, who did not want a trial and did not want the possibility of a lengthy death penalty process. The guilty plea closed the door on speculation in the courtroom, but not in the public square.
Has considered the arguments made by the attorneys. The court has considered the statements made by the victims in this case. The court's going to find that the plea agreement is fair and reasonable under the circumstances. I want to acknowledge the Rusick family as well as the Watts family that showing mercy on Mr. Watts is understood, and I respect that decision to request that the district attorney not seek the death penalty in this case. And so the court is going to accept this plea bargain under the circumstances. Words that come to mind when I hear the evidence in this case are a senseless crime and the viciousness of the crime. And equally aggravating in this court's determination is the despicable act of disposing of the bodies in the manner in which they were done in this case. I've been a judicial officer now for starting my 17th year, and I could objectively say that this is perhaps the most inhumane and vicious crime that I have handled out of the thousands of cases that I have seen. And nothing less than a maximum sentence would be appropriate, and anything less than the maximum sentence would depreciate the seriousness of this offense. So the court is going to sentence Mr. Watts as follows. With regard to count number 1, murder in the first degree as it relates to Shanann Watts, the court is going to sentence you, sir, to a life sentence in the Colorado Department of Corrections, followed with no possibility of parole. And that is going to run consecutively to all but counts 3 and 4. With regard to count 2, as it relates to murder in the first degree with Bella, the court is going to sentence you to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections with no possibility of parole. With regard to count number 3, the court is going to sentence you as it relates to Celeste to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections with no possibility of parole. With regard to counts 4 and 5 relating to Bella and Celeste as a different theory of first-degree murder, the court is going to sentence you to life in the Colorado Department of Corrections, and legally those sentences must run concurrently as a different theory of first-degree murder. Recognizing the unlawful termination of pregnancy for the unborn child that has been named Nico, the court absolutely believes that the maximum sentence of 48 years would be appropriate to run consecutive to the other charges, with an additional mandatory parole period of 3 years as set forth by statute. With regard to count number 7, as it relates to tampering with a deceased body, as well as counts 8 and 9, each a class 3 felony, the court is going to impose a maximum sentence of 12 years each for those counts to run consecutively to the other counts. The court is going to order that the statutory fees be paid and court costs. The court's going to grant the prosecution 91 days to file a notice of restitution, and that will be the sentence of the court. We will shortly be in recess. I would respectfully ask the parties that you remain in your seat. There is a plan by the deputies on allowing people to exit the courtroom, so please remain seated until you are authorized to leave the courtroom based on the direction of the deputies. Deputies, I would respectfully ask that you take this defendant into custody and have him serve the rest of his life in the Department of Corrections. We are in recess.
Please rise.
Cindy and Ronnie Watts continue to question why their son had pleaded guilty so quickly, and whether the full truth had really come out. As we go on in this intriguing video, we invite you to kindly click the like button. On November 19, 2018, Chris stood before the court as Judge Marcelo Kopkow sentenced him to 5 life sentences without the possibility of parole, 3 consecutive and 2 concurrent, plus 84 additional years for the other charges. He was transferred out of Colorado for his own safety and is now serving his time at Dodge Correctional Institution in Waupun, Wisconsin. The sentence was final. There would be no appeals, no chance at parole. The case, legally, was closed. Yet the story was far from over. Because even with the legal record firmly established, Cindy Watts began giving interviews, sharing her grief but also her disbelief. She said she cried every morning. She said she could not reconcile the son she raised with the crimes he admitted to in court. To her, Chris was still the quiet, polite boy she had known for 33 years. And as she spoke, one question began to haunt everyone who listened: were her pleas the words of a heartbroken mother searching for understanding, or the protective denial of someone who refused to see the truth? That question becomes even more complicated when you consider the deeper context: her relationship with Sean, her relationship with the grandchildren, and her view of her own parenting role. The law had already decided Chris's fate. But Cindy's story, her words, and her actions would continue to stir anger, sympathy, and debate. And as we look closer at those relationships, the cracks in the so-called perfect family portrait begin to show. But before we get there, we must examine Cindy herself, her grief, her loyalty, and her insistence on a truth that may never come. Because her voice is not just the cry of a grieving grandmother. It is also the opening line of a family tragedy that refuses to rest. Days after his guilty plea, she agreed to speak on record from her home in Spring Lake, North Carolina, answering questions many people had been asking across the country. Why speak at all when emotions were raw and the facts already sounded unbearable? Because the case had consumed the news, and she said she wanted answers, clarity, and a fair hearing for her son in the court of public opinion. She did not show up to argue law, she showed up to explain how she saw her son and what she believed had happened. That decision, to sit down and be questioned, would shape how millions judged her words from that point forward. In those interviews, Cindy talked about pain that did not lift with the sun. "I wake up every morning crying," she said, describing days that felt impossible to get through. She was not vague about the weight she carried, she said it bluntly, the kind of line that tells you this is the first thought when her eyes open and the last when they close. Her voice shook, and she tried to make sense of a family that had been here one week and gone the next. The public heard a grandmother who missed 2 little girls and an unborn grandson, and a mother who could not reconcile the son she raised with what the court had accepted. That tension, sorrow that feels true and disbelief that runs against the record, sat at the center of everything she would say. Cindy also laid out how she viewed Chris, and she did it in plain language. "He's not a sociopath. He's not a psychopath," she told reporters, insisting he had been a quiet, respectful, good kid who struggled socially but never fit the image people were painting. She stressed that unconditional love does not mean approving of what happened, but it does mean she would not abandon him. She questioned how the case moved so fast from arrest to plea, and she said she asked her son not to confess if he had not done what was claimed. To her, a plea that ended his life outside prison might have saved time, but it did not answer the question that kept her awake. Part of Cindy's message was that the public had not heard the full story, and she pointed to the moment in the interrogation room when Chris told his father that he had killed Shannon after claiming she harmed the children. That version was later contradicted by what Chris told investigators in a 2019 prison interview, but in the weeks after the plea, Cindy was still holding on to what she said she had first heard. She wondered out loud whether pressure, fear, or legal strategy pushed her son into accepting a deal that ended any trial. She said she wanted him to fight, to speak at length, to explain. If the goal was only to save his life, she argued, then a life sentence still meant he would die in prison either way, and the truth would remain buried.
To tell us that Chris was thinking of a plea, that he wanted to speak to us about it. And when we got down there, it was a lie. They wouldn't let us talk to him about anything. And then we had to talk to him through a screen and a phone. And he just looked, he was crying. I mean, he wasn't crying. You could see the movement in his mouth that when I talked about Bella and I talked about Cece and the memorial service that we had for them. And he asked what pictures did we use, and what was the song. You can see how he was trying to hold back tears.
What day was that? Do you remember?
Well, we flew in on that Monday. We flew in on Monday, and we saw him Monday night, and then the plea deal was on Tuesday.
So Monday night was when you wanted to talk to him about it?
Yes, and we weren't allowed. And it would have helped us so much to be able to talk to him. I wouldn't have to go through all this now. Everything just seems to be shrouded in secrecy. And just tell us what is going on. Let us ask Chris if it's okay if you talk to us. I just don't like the way it was handled from the very beginning. I don't like the way it was handled. I want to save your life, that's all. We're just here, we're going to save his life. We want him to get life in prison. It was like they already knew he was guilty. And this was the end of it.
Were you worried about the death penalty being a possibility?
No, I didn't care about the death penalty. Nobody's going to die in Colorado. I don't think anyone has, one person? And Colorado is changing. So people stay on death row forever. There was I think he'd be safer on death row. And her parents said they didn't want any more death. So I don't see how the death penalty could have mattered. All I want is the truth. I just want the truth. That's it. And I know Chris, he would take responsibility. And I guess maybe he is. I don't know. I just can't see him doing that.
What do you think the truth is about how Shanann and Bella and Celeste died?
Oh, God, I don't know anymore, honestly. I don't know his frame of mind, and I don't know his frame of mind. Because why would you plead guilty to something you didn't do? And that's all I want to know. Why would you plead guilty if you didn't do it? If you told your dad you didn't do it? And that's what I want to know. And they said, well, you'll find all that out. Christopher will talk to you when and after he's sentenced. Well, isn't that too late then? I mean, isn't it too late? What if he tells me, no, I didn't do it? I just took this plea deal because they told me I was going to go to jail anyways. I just want the truth. All of us just want the truth. That's all. But I would like to know what triggered it. How can a normal young man, and he's normal, he was normal, but he wasn't evaluated when he came into the system. He wasn't normal if he did this.
It must be bewildering.
It's bewildering to me. It is absolutely. How does this happen? How did this happen? And I go back in my mind thinking, was there something I didn't pick up with on Chris? But I can't think of anything except he was quiet.
It sounds like in your own mind, you're unsure as to what happened.
Yes.
Have you reconciled the idea that he could have done all of this?
Yes. And that scares me to death. It scares me to death to think that he could have done all of this. And I don't want to go there. I don't want to go there right now. But I don't see why he's pleading guilty. I wouldn't. I'd fight. I'd fight to the end. But then you ask yourself, would a normal person dispose of the bodies the way you did? And I would have called 911 if it happened like that.
What would you say to Chris right now if he were sitting here?
If we were by ourselves,
Yeah.
I would say, Christopher, I need to know what happened that night. I need to know what happened. I've got to get these thoughts out of my head, what I think could have happened, but I need to know. And I think in time he will tell me.
Probably nothing you ever would have imagined you would have faced.
Never. Never. No, and not from the son that I raised and Ronnie raised and our children, you know. We just did everything for them. We worked for them. We wanted them to have a good life, good education. And we stressed education. And they were both doing well. I thought, you know, I knew marriages can be bad, but you can get out of them and go on. But I don't know what was going through anybody's mind that night. I mean, I feel too much. I mean, I definitely feel everything way too much and have a conscience that I just feel way too much.
What do you want to happen now? What would you hope would happen now?
Well, I want Chris to have his day in court. I mean, I need to know. I mean, I'd feel wonderful if I could talk to him and he could tell me what happened. And then we can all go on. But if he didn't do it, if he did not do this, then I need somebody to defend him. I need someone to defend him if he did not do this. Do they have the evidence? He's my son. I got to do everything I've got to do everything I can to help, to make sure that he is defended properly. But he said this is his decision, so I don't know. There's doubt. I have doubt that he did it. I can't see that he did it. I just cannot see him doing that as much as he loved his girls. How do you do that? I just don't see it. I just can't see him doing it. I just wanted to make sure that he has, I just wanted a defense. I wanted him to be defended.
And you haven't had any discussions with his attorneys about this?
No. I asked them, do you know what happened? They said no. We don't. Only person that knows what happened is Chris. Well, then he's told you his story, you know, in the affidavit. They said they would defend him if he wanted to go forward, but he said he didn't want to go forward.
And the bottom line is you would have liked to have been part of that discussion with him
I would
before
have.
you made that decision.
That's what I thought we were going down there for. At least let us talk to him. Let us talk to him. It would have made all the difference in the world if they would have just let us talk to him. If he was going to do this, what difference does it make who's listening? But he has our love. He has our unconditional love. I will never abandon my son. He did a horrible, horrible, if that comes to pass that he did this, then I still love him. He's my son. And I will always love him. And a lot of people don't understand that. And I don't understand that, why they don't.
Well, could you talk a little bit about some things we talked about yesterday. You said, I think your exact words were, he's not the psychopath next
He
door.
isn't. He's not the sociopath next door. He's not the psychopath. He didn't kill little small animals. He didn't do any of these things. He was a good child. I didn't see anything. I didn't see anything that was abnormal about him, except he was socially awkward. He had trouble socializing, but so did I when I was younger. I think you learn that as you grow, and I think he felt a little bit more comfortable in his skin, and he just, I don't think he just had the right person at his side. I don't. That relationship was toxic from the very beginning.
What would you say to Shanann's family if you could talk to them?
God, I'm so sorry this happened. For both our families, because we both lost everything. They lost a daughter, we lost our son, we lost our grandchildren. We all lost. Everybody did. And you'll never get it back. And they were precious. They were so, so precious.
The contrast between Cindy's claims and the established facts was glaring. When Chris confessed in the 2019 prison interview, it wasn't just a shift in his narrative, it was a challenge to Cindy's stance on the case. Her focus on her son's well-being, her insistence on finding a deeper reason for his actions, was no longer tenable in the face of the truth. She couldn't escape the reality that Chris had been fully responsible for the deaths of his family. The question remained, why couldn't she accept this? Was it because she loved her son so deeply that she couldn't fathom the possibility of his being capable of such horrors, or was it something more, perhaps a mother's need to protect her child from the unforgivable? The public response to Cindy's comments was mixed, and much of it was shaped by the emotional weight of her words. On one hand, viewers could understand her grief. The loss of a child, no matter what that child had done, is something no parent should ever have to endure. But on the other hand, Cindy's refusal to fully acknowledge the brutal reality of Chris's actions seemed like an affront to the memory of Shanann, Bella, and Celeste. Shanann's family, in particular, had been outspoken in their condemnation of Cindy's statements. They wanted Chris to be held accountable, not just legally but morally, and they were furious that Cindy seemed to be defending him. As the weeks passed, Cindy's refusal to come to terms with Chris's guilt remained one of the most poignant aspects of the case. She had a chance to address the public, to reckon with the truth, but instead, she continued to hold on to a version of events that no longer matched the evidence. She remained in the role of the loving, protective mother, trying desperately to keep her son's image intact while the world around her had already moved on. But the weight of the facts was too much to ignore. Chris Watts had confessed to the murders, the truth had been established in the prison interview, and the world was left to reckon with the horror of what had happened. Cindy's struggle to accept that reality, her refusal to face the truth of her son's actions, left her in a painful limbo, where the truth was clear, but her emotional attachment to her son kept her in a state of denial. The case may have been legally settled, but for Cindy Watts, the search for answers was far from over. And so, the question remains, is a mother's love enough to shield her from the truth? Or is the truth powerful enough to force a reckoning, no matter how painful? The question of whether Cindy and Ronnie's parenting style was good is complicated. On one hand, their loyalty to Chris, while undeniably strong, was rooted in their deep love for him. On the other, their refusal to respect clear boundaries, like those set by Shanann around the children's safety, demonstrated a pattern of overstepping parental roles. The allergy incident is a case in point. Where Shanann had drawn a clear line to protect her daughter, Cindy, in defending her actions, minimized the importance of that boundary. For parents, especially grandparents, the responsibility is not just to love but to respect the roles and rules set by the parents of the children involved. And in this case, Cindy's defense of her son, while understandable from a mother's perspective, seemed to ignore that responsibility. Cindy and Ronnie's responses throughout the investigation and trial also highlight a broader issue in the Watts family dynamic, a consistent failure to confront uncomfortable truths. Despite the overwhelming evidence that Chris had brutally murdered his family, Cindy maintained her stance, consistently speaking about Chris as a misunderstood man. This refusal to fully acknowledge the gravity of Chris's actions was not just about love, it was about maintaining a narrative that allowed her to continue seeing him through the lens of the child she had raised. That narrative didn't change even in the face of Chris's confession. This denial was in sharp contrast to how Shanann's family, the Rzuseks, responded to the unfolding events. When Cindy continued to publicly defend Chris, Shanann's family grew increasingly upset. They felt that Cindy's comments were not just misguided but actively disrespectful to the memory of Shanann and her children. Shanann's parents publicly called Cindy's defense vicious, grotesque, and utterly false. They argued that Cindy's continued insistence on seeing Chris as a victim was not just denial, it was a rejection of the truth. The Rzuseks wanted the world to see their daughter and granddaughters as victims of a cold-blooded killer, not a misunderstood man caught in an impossible situation. Their public response made it clear that, for them, there was no room for sympathy for Chris. In the court of public opinion, Cindy and Ronnie's stance on the case became increasingly isolated. Their defense of Chris, while coming from a place of deep love, clashed with the established facts of the case. The media began to draw a clear line between the victim's family, who had lost so much, and the Watts family, who continued to protect their son. The Rzuseks' condemnation of Cindy's comments made it clear that, in their eyes, there was no room for defending a murderer. They made it known that no matter the circumstances, no matter the family dynamics, Chris was responsible for his actions, and there was no excuse for the deaths of Shanann, Bella, and Celeste. As the sentencing and public statements continued, mainstream outlets began to shift their narrative. The coverage was dominated by the horrific nature of the crimes and the finality of Chris's plea. The media coverage memorialized the victims, Shanann, Bella, and Celeste, by focusing on the tragedy of their deaths. The Fresh Start narrative that had once been part of Chris and Shanann's story was now overshadowed by the cold reality of what Chris had done. Public perception was no longer about the family they once were but about the family they had become in the aftermath of such an unthinkable crime. However, Cindy's refusal to confront the truth continued to stand in stark contrast to how the rest of the world viewed the case. Her persistent insistence on defending Chris, even after his guilty plea and confession, only made the public divide between the Watts and the Rzuseks wider. For the Watts family, the tragedy was not just about the loss of the girls, it was about the loss of their son, too. For Shanann's family, the tragedy was about losing their daughter and grandchildren to someone they had trusted, and they could not fathom why Cindy continued to protect him. The public reckoning for Cindy Watts was far from over. Her defense of Chris, while emotionally understandable, raised difficult questions about the role of a parent in confronting the truth. Could she ever accept the reality of what her son had done? Or would she continue to cling to a version of him that no longer existed? As the case became a fixture in the media, one thing became clear: Cindy's refusal to accept Chris's guilt was part of a larger pattern of denial and self-protection that had defined the Watts family's response to the tragedy from the very beginning. As we conclude this story, it's important to remember the lives lost: Shanann, Bella, and Celeste Watts. Their lives were full of promise and love, tragically cut short by a man they called husband and father. Their memories remain at the forefront, not just of this case, but of a devastating tragedy that altered two families forever. The Rzusek family lost a daughter and two granddaughters, while the Watts family lost a son and grandchildren. The grief, though unique to each, is undeniable for both. Throughout this video, we've touched on the painful complexities of grief, denial, and the human need to protect those we love, even when the truth is too hard to face. The questions around Chris Watts's motives, his family dynamics, and the way the Watts family responded to the horror of what he had done reflect a deeply emotional and morally complex story. At the heart of this is a mother's love and a family's inability to come to terms with an unimaginable reality. But it also raises an important question: how do love and denial collide in families? How do we reconcile a parent's need to defend their child with the horrific reality of their actions? These are not easy questions, but they are worth exploring. As we reflect on this case, we encourage you to consider these themes thoughtfully and respectfully. If you found this video insightful, consider subscribing to our channel for more in-depth explorations of true crime stories. We welcome your thoughts and reflections on this case, and we hope you'll join the conversation. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.
And if I can have you folks introduce yourself for the record.
I'm Cindy Watts.
Ron Watson.
Thank you. And I have authorized you to make a statement to the court as paternal grandparents of the children. And if you choose not to make a statement, but your designee, Ms. Powers, chooses to, she can do so as well. How would you like to proceed
Can I
today?
read that?
Yeah, do you want me to start?
I want you to start, but I would like to read
Who's
that.
going to be speaking today?
Your Honor, initially, they've asked me, and they're hoping that they have the strength to speak, but if they do not, they've written out their statements and asked me to finish for them. So
That would be fine. Who would like to go first?
if I could start, Your Honor. On behalf of the Watts, Your Honor, and to the community, we thank you for the opportunity and the recognition under the Victim Bill of Rights. We come today as the grandparents and the parent of the daughter and children whose life was taken in this case. We are not here to ask for leniency. We are not in any way condoning or tolerating the crime that has occurred and the pain that has been caused. We join in our daughter-in-law and grandchildren's family in saying this should never have happened. This is not condonable. This is something that we will never get over. We appreciate the consideration that everyone has paid, most especially the families that have lost everyone. We appreciate that they begged for Christopher's life. We agree and echo what they have said, that it is not his place to take anyone's life, nor would it be our place as a community to take his life. So we thank you for the opportunity and for every consideration and effort that's been put out. The prosecution in this case has in fact respected the Victim Bill of Rights. They took the time to explain that the information that my clients had at the time that they were interviewed was not correct. They were misinformed. They were searching for answers. They were not intending to cause any pain to anyone, and they appreciate that the prosecution answered their questions and gave them the time and the respect and the consideration so that they could tell this court and everyone in this community that the interview content was not their message, that they accept that their son has done this, that they accept that he chose to plead guilty, that he sought and requested their consent and agreement for a life sentence. They appreciate that he is given the opportunity to serve that life sentence. It is his responsibility, it is his sentence, and it is not enough to make up for what has done. We understand and we join the family in that we have questions. We don't know how such a thing could possibly happen, or that a man that was responsible for raising his children and protecting his wife would take the steps that he did, and that he would disregard their bodies and the love that he had for them and they had for him and everyone else, and take the gestures and put this community through the investigation and the discovery and the responsibility of bringing justice. We do not understand that. We do not think it was appropriate. We cannot begin to think that an explanation will ever justify it. My clients indicate that they understand that a full opportunity for a confession with all of the responsibility and accountability has not occurred. And they support the family and the request that that happen, if not today, at an appropriate time, in an appropriate manner, so that everyone can have peace, to understand to the best of their ability the details that they need and to have their questions answered. And by giving this opportunity of a life sentence, we hope that he embraces that moment. That had the death penalty been pursued, there would not have been an opportunity to be accountable and to give a full confession. And had the death penalty been sought, counsel would have fought for his life, the prosecutors would have been engaged in a multiple-year battle, the families would have been torn apart, this community would have had to subsidize it and endure it, and we have so much respect and gratefulness that that did not happen. We would strongly encourage Christopher Watts to give that full confession in the tone and in the timing that he thinks is appropriate with the guidance of his counsel. We feel that it would be appropriate and helpful to ease the pain and the suffering. But we also say we don't think that there's anything that he can say that will ever account for his behavior. There's nothing that can be done to cure the harm he has caused.